what Nehru has said in mind, and that is why it is so difficult for the current forces to challenge and overthrow the historical worldview that has been created. Finally, a comment on how Nehru saw his role in taking the historical process forward. The lessons he learned from Indian history of the acceptance of the existence of multiple truths, of a non-violent dialogical tradition, of negotiating of truth claims and conflict, and arriving at a high level of synthesis were greatly strengthened by his increasingly deeper understanding of Mahatma Gandhi and Gandhiji's practice. This involved a change in his own Marxist understanding, which he had argued till the mid-1930s, as seen in his autobiography, towards a more complex Gramscian Marxian understanding of how change was to be negotiated, which we see, which is reflected in his later writing, The Discovery of India. This shift in Nehru has been seen by many as Nehru's contradictory, fascinating nature, his total dependence and subservience to Gandhiji, his giving in to vested interests, and so on. We do not agree with that. In an insightful work, Manas Firak Bhattacharya sees Nehru's doubts, his ambivalence, his openness, his engagement with apparently contradictory positions, not as his weakness, but as his strength. He is correctly critical of people like Partha Chatterjee, who dismiss Nehru's absolutely outstanding work, The Discovery of India, as a book of rambling bristling with the most obvious contradictions. Or other scholars, such as the Eurocentric Marxist Terry Anderson, who shockingly rubbishes Nehru's Discovery of India as a steam bath of Schwarzerei with a Barbara partnered street. Nehru tried to move forward his goal towards his goal, what he thought was his historic goal, with this sensibility. This meant following a path which would be slower, but it took people along and did not resort to violence and force, as many of his contemporaries trying the same transformation did in other parts of the world after being liberated. We may ask ourselves the question that if Nehru was indeed as incompetent and evil as has been described by certain forces, why the Mahatma chose him as his successor and not his other brilliant comrades like Radha Gopalachari and Sardar Patel? In a speech at the AICC on 15 June 1942, as early as that, Gandhiji said the following. Somebody suggested that Pandit Warangal and I were estranged. This is baseless. Again, using the imagery that Gandhi took. He said, you cannot divide water by repeatedly striking it with a stick. It is important to mention this because, as you know, these days, the effort is to constantly divide our national movement. Nehru versus Bose, Gandhi versus Patel, Patel versus Nehru, Bhagat Singh versus Gandhi. There is, as if the national movement was only fighting each other rather than the British. So Gandhi says you cannot divide water by repeatedly striking it with a stick. It is just as difficult to divide us. I have always said that not Gandhi, not Sardar Vallabhbhai, but Jawahar will be my successor. When I am gone, he will speak my language too. Even if this does not happen, I would at least die with this faith. Why did Gandhiji have such tremendous faith in them? One can surmise only two reasons, and I will briefly mention that. First, Nehru quintessentially represented and fought for what Rabindranath Tagore called the idea of India. And what was it? The idea of India in brief, as I see it, is 5 core values. First, sovereignty, that is, India will be independent and self-reliant and oppose imperialist domination globally. 2, democracy, that is, India will be a democratic country with adult franchise, with equal rights to all citizens irrespective of their caste, class, language, gender, region, or ethnicity. 3. Secularism, that is people belonging to different religious states will have equal rights in the country. India will not be a majoritarian Hindu state. Nehru and Gandhi repeatedly said that the future India is not going to be a Hindu Rashtra. Secularism and democracy were seen as coterminous. One could not exist without the other. The term secular democracy was often used conjointly, just as communalism was joined with loyalism. Secular democracy and communal loyalism. The fourth item and idea of India was a pro-poor orientation. To the revolutionaries, socialists and communists, all were agreed on a pro-poor orientation, even if there was no consensus on whether it was India was going to be socialist or a communist. Lastly, the fifth idea was that India shall have a modern scientific outlook, which was to be propagated. Nehru called it the scientific consensus, that is overcoming obscurantism and blind faith.